Tonight, it wasn't an April Fool's joke as Saskatchewan residents were greeted with lower prices at the pump. The looming trade war with the United States may affect your reading habits. And a Regina DJ is over the moon to have his music on a popular HBO show.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It's Tuesday, April 1st, and welcome to the CBC Saskatchewan News. Hello, I'm Dan Plaster. Saskatchewan is now a carbon tax-free province because Prime Minister Mark Carney has scrapped his party's unpopular carbon tax, and here in this province, Premier Scott Moe has paused the industrial carbon tax. Both changes are now in effect. Sarah Onyango has more on how the people here are being impacted.
One of the first ways people here are noticing is at the pumps. Overnight, gas prices went down by up to 18 cents a litre across the country.
I think Saskatchewan has been dumped on for years, and this carbon tax has been unnecessary.
That's good for the province that we're carbon tax free, yes. Not happy with the price of fuel. It didn't drop as much as it was supposed to, though.
It's not going to let us go on trips, but it's going to help us feed our families.
They may be paying less at the pump, but they will have less in their wallets because the carbon tax rebates will be ending this spring.
Likely we're just going to see most of our population not receive checks anymore. So I'm guessing bottom-end consumer is going to struggle a bit more while we just receive less rebates.
And experts agree. Low-income households have actually gotten back more in rebates than they would be saving from a zero-carbon pricing.
Their carbon pricing rebates would have been more than the amount they spent at the fuel pump and on their natural gas bills and in their products they bought. So the loss of that policy, it's sort of a contradiction, you'd think, but it will actually hurt affordability for those low-income households.
Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe also paused the industrial carbon tax in the province, but environmentalists say this is not a good move.
Greenhouse gas emissions are already 3 times the national average, and yet we are prepared to do away with a central part of Saskatchewan climate change policy.
The cancellation of the industrial carbon tax also has a big impact on the province's bottom line. It was supposed to bring in around $431 million this year, but now that won't happen. Instead, Moe says this is an opportunity for families and businesses in Saskatchewan to save hundreds of dollars a year. Sarah Onyango, CBC News, Regina.
Tomorrow is Liberation Day. At least that's what U.S. President Donald Trump is calling it. This is when the U.S. plans to reveal its global tariff plan and relaunch its 25% across-the-board tariffs on Canada and Mexico. Closer to home, opposition leader Carla Beck says Premier Scott Moe hasn't done enough to plan for the potential impacts to Saskatchewan.
The fact that we see no contingency plans, no willingness by this government to even entertain what the impact of these tariffs might look like, I think has people worried about the government's capacity to step in and offer some support if the worst happens tomorrow.
The NDP also cited a new poll by Angus Reid that shows economic anxiety is higher in Saskatchewan than any other province. More than half of respondents said they were struggling or uncomfortable financially. A trade war is coming to your local bookstore in response to American tariffs. The Canadian counter tariffs could be impacting books, puzzles, and more right here in the province. Liam O'Connor has more.
On Wednesday, the Canadian government is set to impose a number of counter tariffs. These are in response to the 25% American tariffs Trump put on Canadian goods last month. But the Canadian countermeasures could seriously impact bookstores, and that has local bookstore owners worried.
The counter tariffs are going to target books printed in the United States. And that might sound okay, except for the majority of books authored by Canadian authors and publishers are printed in the U.S.
Garden says it could be difficult to separate out Canadian and American authored books. He believes Canadian books will get caught up in the counter tariffs and their prices will likely go up. Some publishers estimate the tariffs could increase the cost of books published in the U.S. anywhere from 5 to 20%. Garden says independent bookstores are already struggling to stay open.
We're hanging on here, but it's not by a lot. So, you know, whereas you think about an Amazon is selling everything. They can afford to absorb those tariffs, charge the same amount for the books, or even maybe reduce the price for them to basically put smaller bookstores like ours out of business.
Similar to books, there's also uncertainty for other local business owners. Cowtown Kids Toy and Candy, based in Maple Creek, says it prides itself on the selection of toys and products it offers. The store's owner says it's not sure how these latest tariffs will impact his business, but he says the store is already noticing the earlier tariffs.
We were already feeling that, and we've been working hard to mitigate that. And as far as the new ones, they will have a dramatic price effect on our business, for our customers, and just the overall challenges we face to be able to bring an affordable product to the Canadian consumer.
Siemens says there are very few items he sells that are produced in Canada, which he says makes his store and industry a different market compared to a grocery store that potentially has Canadian alternatives for some of their products. Anyone can still write the government and plead their case for why an item shouldn't be included in the counter tariffs. That open comment period ends on Tuesday. Liam O'Connor, CBC News, Saskatoon.
There is a lot of concern within the U.S. Congress on both sides of the aisle about how these tariff announcements are affecting the financial markets. Today in Washington, Democratic senators are starting legislation aimed at stopping President Trump from using the fentanyl crisis to decide economic policy. They want a vote aimed at blocking blanket tariffs on Canada.
You know, I've been a China hawk, and the kind of sort of imposing broad tariffs on China, which really has hurt us in trade every step of the way, makes sense. To do that to Canada, our friend, who our economies, our interrelated economies depend on each other, makes no sense whatsoever.
The Democrats are also calling on the Republican colleagues to join them publicly in voicing their concerns against Trump's proposed tariffs on Canada. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre reaffirmed his commitment to expanding the energy sector while campaigning in St. John's. Evan Dyer has the details.
Pierre Poilievre made his first stop in Newfoundland of this campaign, and he made a pitch focused on energy and pipelines, trying to draw a contrast between his own policies, which he said would greatly expand Canadian energy production.
We're going to unleash the production of our resources. We're going to support doubling oil and gas production here in Newfoundland and Labrador. We're going to back the offshore by repealing C-69, the No New Pipelines law, repealing the energy cap, repealing the entire carbon tax.
Contrasting that with the approach that he said his rival Liberal Mark Carney would take, accusing Mark Carney of having opposed big infrastructure projects for oil and gas in the past, including testifying against the Northern Gateway pipeline. Pierre Poilievre also made a promise to Newfoundlanders that he would double the oil output of that province, and generally just argued that he would be the one who would deliver on demands presented by Canada's 14 biggest energy companies that he said would be necessary to establish some kind of independence of the U.S., break dependency on U.S. markets, and make Canada stronger in the face of threats from Donald Trump. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Fredericton.
Toronto area Liberal candidate Paul Chang has dropped out of the federal election race. His decision to step down came after the RCMP told CBC News they are looking into whether he broke the law. Chang had recently suggested that people turn in Conservative candidate Joe Tay to the Chinese consulate to collect a bounty. Tay is one of 6 activists targeted for arrest by Hong Kong police. Chang's exit came just hours after Liberal leader Mark Carney said the candidate could stay on after apologizing for his comments. The Conservative Party has dropped Mark McKenzie in southwestern Ontario over remarks he made in the past. McKenzie is a city councillor and former radio personality in Windsor. It was first reported by CTV News after the broadcaster said it unearthed a 2022 podcast recording where McKenzie expressed support for public hangings and jokingly suggested Justin Trudeau should receive the death penalty. Later in the day, the party dropped a second candidate, Stephen Marquis, for recent posts on social media. Saskatchewan seniors and young adults can now apply to have their advanced glucose monitors covered under the province's drug plan. Until now, the monitors were only covered for some people 18 and under. Seniors 65 and older and young adults between 18 and 25 are now eligible for full coverage. The monitors help diabetics manage glucose levels by using a sensor on the skin. That sensor sends readings to smartphones and other devices, minimizing low blood sugar episodes. The province says roughly 9,000 people could be eligible for the expanded coverage. As the weather starts to get warmer, the yard work begins. Now, one thing you cannot do is prune your elm trees. To help prevent Dutch elm disease, the province has a ban on pruning elm trees, which has begun and runs until August 31st. The province also prohibits storing, transporting, and using elm wood for any purpose. That includes wood chips and firewood. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. More than 100 local students got to take part in a live hackathon at the Saskatchewan Science Centre. The hackathon is part of a national program called Voice is Your Power. The event featured a performance by Cree songwriter Sebastian Gaskin, who just won a Juno over the weekend. The whole point of the hackathon is to teach kids the basics of computer science and coding using music from Indigenous artists. One student who took part says it's been inspiring.
I think it's definitely a cool topic, something that's definitely interesting to a lot of other people. It's really cool from what I've learned so far, and it's great how the layering of music and coding works together. As an Indigenous person myself, I think that's really cool that we get to also learn different kinds of music and learn from other people about this music.
The Your Voice is Power curriculum includes topics like residential schools, the 60 Scoop, and the Truth and Reconciliations Commission's 94 calls to action. It's hoped these kinds of events will encourage more students from diverse backgrounds to explore computer science. A Regina DJ is pumped his electronic dance music is being used in a hugely popular TV show, The White Lotus. Danny Elder, who goes by the name Rumpus, says he's seen a spike in plays of his song since it hit the small screen. We caught up with him to hear more.
It was just like a fun track, and I never really thought about it too much, like it was going to end up getting placed in a show or something like that. The White Lotus is one of the biggest shows on television right now, and it's kind of, worldwide, and it's getting a ton of attention, and I'm seeing a lot of benefits and stuff from it, like following my socials, streaming my music, and just attracting a lot of new fans this time around, which is awesome. I had some information that it was possibly going to get placed in one of the episodes of The White Lotus back in November. Someone from the record label that I was signed to, which was Westwood Recordings, told me that there's a good chance it's going to land in the show, but you really don't know until kind of right before it comes out, because they can go to the editing room on the final edit of the show and decide, oh, this didn't fit and we want to change it out. I watched a show and I was always wondering, like, oh, what kind of scene are they going to fit in a high energy track like this into? And when I started seeing them going to the full moon parties and they were talking about going to a nightclub and all that in the episode before, I thought, okay, I think I know where it's going to land. It's going to be in one of those two scenes, and it ended up being in the nightclub. And I think also the part of the reason they picked the song was because there's a lot of they just showed some fire spinning on the beach, and there's a lot of action and high energy stuff going on, and the song is like geared towards a high energy dance floor, but also so the lyrics in the song say, we got the fire and we're burning up, set it off. And I think it just kind of ties into the theme of the scene that they're shooting in at the time. A lot of the people that had the opportunity to hear the song and have been exposed to my music now are people that maybe wouldn't have looked it up, or maybe don't even listen to electronic music, and now it's introduced them to it, and possibly they become fans now. So yeah, it's really cool to just be able to tap into a whole new, wider, broader audience. The song's been Shazammed so many times in the last week, and I've been getting multiple thousands of plays per day on the track, which was released over a year ago. So once the track's been out that long, generally the plays on it have slowed down, and but they've definitely like taken a huge ramp up, and it's nice to see getting some life put back into the track and getting more exposure from it. I got into the DJ scene back definitely in Regina. I mean, the first shows that I ever had were in Regina, and I used to play in Saskatoon a lot, and I had friends up there, so we'd go back and forth and just play in different spots around Saskatchewan. And then eventually my music started reaching a broader audience. I started playing in Alberta and BC and then the States, and yeah, it's now kind of turned into a global thing, and I'm touring internationally, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been quite the journey since the beginning, thinking back to how it all started.
Ethan Williams is up in Saskatoon, and our weather specialist has a look at the weather right now, and a little blast of winter here in the southern parts this morning.
Yeah, exactly. Winter hanging on despite the fact we've entered the month of April. Should be feeling a little more spring-like out there, but winter definitely staying firm in place. Before we take a look forward, though, I do want to take a look back at the month that was through the month of March. First, we'll take a look at some of the temperature stats, and this is kind of interesting because in previous months we've seen much of the province kind of following a uniform sort of temperature average through the month, where all of us are warmer or colder than normal or right around average, but many different parts of the province experiencing different types of weather through the month. Western sections like Meadow Lake and Swift Current trending almost 2.5 to 3 degrees warmer than normal. Then you have a place like Key Lake there, almost 5 degrees colder than normal. And Regina and Saskatoon, we kind of fell in the middle there. Precipitation-wise, we're kind of all over the place as well. A place like Prince Albert seeing its 7th driest March on record. Meadow Lake, even though you got over half of what you normally get moisture-wise in the month of March, that is still your 9th driest March on record. And then even just contrast a place like Regina with Moose Jaw, just a little ways down the Trans-Canada Highway, and you see the vast difference there in terms of just how much moisture we got in March. But right now, that moisture has started moving into central parts of the province, up around Saskatoon. We also had some flurries today, and into northern Saskatchewan is where we are continuing to see snow as we head through the evening. And into Wednesday, that snow will be a little bit heavy at times as we get into northern sections for early Wednesday morning and for the first part of the afternoon. For south and central, we're expecting another mostly cloudy day. We're going to be hanging on to that cloud cover for a little while. A little bit of a break in that cloud cover early Thursday, but then it's back for Thursday afternoon. And that chance of flurries and light snow returns for especially southern Saskatchewan. But by the time we get into Friday, this is when the pattern starts to shift a bit. High pressure starting to move in. That'll clear out the clouds a little more as we're getting into the weekend. But for northern Saskatchewan, yeah, snowfall amounts maybe over 10 centimeters, especially closer to that northern border. Churchill region, I think you're mostly just looking at a skiff of snow. As that low pressure system moves through, bringing that snow, wind's going to pick up a little bit through southern Saskatchewan, south and central areas really as we get later into Wednesday. And then the wraparound effect from that system going to pick the winds up a bit in northern Saskatchewan as we get into Thursday afternoon. For Regina, well, here's a start to spring. Temperatures staying above the freezing mark for daytime highs as we get through the rest of the work week. And wow, look at those double-digit temperatures and maybe into the mid-teens by the time we get into next Tuesday. And for Saskatoon, a little bit chillier, a few days here, maybe just below freezing, but then things starting to pick up temperature-wise as we see those sunnier conditions start to move in for Saturday and Sunday. So Dan, we are going from feeling like winter here to start April to maybe summer-like conditions by the time we reach next week.
Gotta love it.
It's the way it goes here.
Thanks, Ethan.
You're welcome.
Another volcano has erupted in Iceland, prompting evacuations at a fishing village nearby. This is a fiery show of lava fountains, and it's from a row of several volcanoes in the southwest of the country. It's the 8th time an eruption has occurred in that region since 2023. Geologists were able to warn residents ahead of time. Emergency services say the eruption could continue to swell due to the amount of magma built up underground. Officials report no disruption to air traffic over the Atlantic. After standing strong for more than 110 years, Holy Rosary School in Regina is being demolished. The Cathedral Area School opened in 1914 and saw its last class go through the doors in 2024. The demolition was announced in 2023 after engineers found significant structural issues in the building. We'll be back after the break. It's a little hard to wrap your mind around it, but football season in Saskatchewan is just around the corner. The Saskatchewan Roughriders have been busy preparing for the 2025 season. The team has announced the extension of Melfort-born offensive lineman Logan Furland. The 2024 CFL West All-Stars contract will now take him to the 2027 season. This is just one of the many steps General Manager Jeremy O'Day is taking on a very busy end to a long off-season.
This is the time of the year where you're just finishing putting the final touches on the roster and just finishing up the combine there in Regina, which went really well, and we've got the draft coming up, and but it's right around the corner. Usually when the combine's done, it really kind of speeds up. The snow melts and the players start rolling into town. It starts getting excited, but we're excited about the team. We've got a veteran group coming back. I thought we took a lot of strides forward last year, and I think we've got some unfinished business.
The Riders also announced that training camp will continue to be held in Saskatoon for another 3 years. Griffith Stadium on the campus of the University of Saskatchewan has hosted training camp every year since 2013, except for 2020 and 2021. Training camp 2025 is set to open in Saskatoon on May 11th. Ethan's back with another look at weather. Is it football weather?
Oh, I know. I was just looking at that footage and going, wouldn't it be nice if it looked like that outside? Sadly, not the case for many of us as we go overnight. Temperatures not going to be too bad, but a little bit of that snow still possible. We'll take a look now at those overnight conditions that we're going to see across south and central. Still mostly cloudy, and again, especially through kind of the northern grain belt there is where we do have the possibility of a few lingering flurries as we head through the evening. But overall, in between kind of that freezing and -5 mark for a lot of us, the wind's going to be dying down as well through south and central. But for northern Saskatchewan, a little bit of a breeze tonight as we see those flurries and a little bit of some snow moving through. Again, as we get into about the 7 a.m. hour for Wednesday, that snow is already beginning to move into eastern sections, and by later in the afternoon, most of that's already out of there. We may actually already see some clearing skies. For south and central, this model seems to indicate maybe a few flurries, but I think for most of us, it's just a mostly cloudy day. Maybe a few breaks of sun here and there, Dan, as we get throughout the afternoon, and maybe a bit of a breeze, making those temperatures feel just a bit colder still.
All right, thanks, Ethan.
You're welcome.
And that's it for us tonight. Of course, if you need more news, head to cbc.ca/sask or subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel. And don't forget our app as well. Just download that too. Thanks for watching, everyone.